Nights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant, the big green, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship,
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
and no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Vandalisation has been.
ULEZ takes hold. London's ultra-low emission zone doubles in size today, expanding from 8 to all 32 boroughs, making it the largest cars charging zone in the world. And war on motorists. Certain petrol and diesel vehicles will now have to pay £12.50 a day or risk a £90 fine.
Travel chaos. Thousands of Brits are stranded abroad after a UK air traffic fault yesterday. It's the worst fallout since 2010. Refusing to go, the Spanish Football Federation has called for the immediate resignation of their president, Luis Rubiales, after he kissed that player, Jenny Hermosa. But guess what? He's showing no sign of stepping down. Is his position untenable?
Well, Andrew, I bet you wish you were here in Bromley today. I bet you wish you were here in Bromley this morning, Andrew, don't you? It's really interesting, actually. We've had people shouting out of their car windows saying, well done, Bromley. We've got some guests to talk to in just a moment, Andrew. It's a significant day, and politically, it's an important day for Sadiq Khan.
It is. It's the introduction of what I call his hated ultra-low emission zone expansion. It's going to generate lots and lots of money to fill the big black hole in his finances. Deeply unpopular. Bev Turner is with us there in Bromley all morning here on Britain's Newsroom. We want to know what you think about this. gbviews at gbnews.com. But first, here's your morning news with Ray Addison.
Thanks both. Good morning to you all. It's 9:32. Here's our latest stories. The Transport Secretary has told GB News an independent review will take place following massive disruption to air travel yesterday. Thousands of passengers are still waiting for their flights after air traffic controllers had to manually input flight plans. Although National Air Traffic Services has now resolved the problem, they're warning disruption could still continue. London has become the world's largest pollution charging area after the ultra-low emission zone was expanded to cover the whole capital. Drivers whose vehicles don't meet minimum emissions standards when entering the zone will now have to pay £12.50 a day. The Met Police Commissioner says the force will stop attending mental health calls from November. Scotland Yard's new Right Care, Right Person programme will see officers redirected from non-life-threatening mental health calls to core police work. It's to prevent officers from being stretched thin and over-policing mental health cases. And the NHS is expanding blood pressure checks in local communities to prevent heart attacks and strokes. High street pharmacies delivered just under 150,000 to over 40-year-olds in the year to May. That's more than double the number last year. The new funding will see a further 2.5 million checks, helping to prevent an estimated 1,300 cardiovascular events. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good morning from Bromley in Kent, which today becomes one of the many boroughs, all London boroughs in fact, 32 of them now, which will be included in the ULEZ scheme. Designed to improve air quality, but of course it's extremely controversial, and motorists in particular who own cars which do not comply with the emissions level are furious. Let's talk now. I believe he's in the studio there with you, Howard Cox, who wishes to be London Mayor for the Reform Party in London. Good morning, Howard. It feels like this day has been a long time in the making. What is motivating Sadiq Khan to include, I believe it's about 3.5 million more people within the ULEZ charging scheme?
Hi, Bev. Basically, what's motivating him is the amount of money he can take out of these people. It's as simple as that. There's no reason for doing it to improve air quality. His own TfL and even recently Imperial College, which his deputy mayor tried to manipulate the results. There'll be no demonstrable increase or benefit to air quality by moving the ULEZ all the way out to the M25. It's a complete sham, it's a complete con from a very dishonest mayor.
He would, of course, say that it is time, and there are global influences which are very much pushing this agenda. It is time for us to accept that the car is no longer a luxury that we can afford from a planetary environmental point of view, particularly older diesel and petrol cars. What would you say to that, Howard?
Well, try telling 37 million voters who own cars, and some of them 2 cars, 3 cars, and there's trucks and vans. This is an essential part of our life. It's the very fabric of our commercial and the heartbeat of our economy. It's madness what's happening. What we need to do is incentivise people to move to cleaner fuel technology. We shouldn't need to actually hit people in the pocket. And that's what this dishonest mayor, and I keep saying dishonest, there's so much dishonesty around it, it's reeking of it in City Hall in London. The fact is, people want to drive, it's part of the most important part of our lives, it's the freedom of our lives.
The scrappage scheme, of course, is designed to help people whose vehicles don't comply. Correct me if I'm wrong, is it diesel cars that have been made after 2016, but petrol cars after 2006 that don't comply? Before, sorry, 2006. Is that right?
Yes, that is right indeed, but that scrappage scheme doesn't touch the sides. And the irony of it, this £2,000 for a car, for a non-compliant car. Most of those non-compliant cars are being sold to go outside of London, where they can pollute out there. It seems that's OK. That's an incredible irony in this. And the £2,000, you know, we're looking now that compliant cars, diesel and petrol compliant cars, they're increasing in value. That £2,000 doesn't wash.
it really doesn't. When you talk to people who have got cars that they're having to sell, and we will be talking to some of them here in Bromley this morning. There was an interesting angle to this story, Howard, that I read in the paper yesterday that I believe you were partly behind. And this was the scaffolder that took TfL to court, if I remembered correctly, because he's run up about £11,000 of fine, and the court concluded that he doesn't have to pay that money. Just explain why.
Well, Noel Wilcox, he runs a scaffolding company in northwest London, and he approached me, and I was very honoured that he did do that. I managed to get it into the Sun as an exclusive. And what he did was challenge the fact that the signs themselves do not tell you. When you go into London, the Greater London, you see the word LEZ, low emission zone, or ultra low emission zone. You do not see any thing below that says you have to pay if you're non-compliant. And that's the point. But by doing that, in fact, I can tell you a little anecdote. There's a person who's a good friend of mine in America came over here and actually hired a car, and it was actually, ironically, non-compliant. And they were hit with a big fine that was sent to them over there when they entered the centre of London. But they thought they were coming into a clean air zone. And she spoke to her husband, who was in the passenger seat, and he said, "Oh, isn't this great? We're going to a place which is very clean air." They didn't know they were paying for the privilege.
So how does that need to be addressed? Presumably there's huge cost in TfL changing all of the signage to make it obvious that there is a charge being incurred in order to clean up the air.
Absolutely right, Bev. That's what it's got to do. All of the signs have to be replaced completely, and they've got to have a big C on it. The congestion charge does have that, and that's accepted. That if you see that sign, you're going to have to pay something. But there's nothing for ULEZ, no clarification whatsoever, and they're opening up all over the place, even outside people's driveways. When they just move out of their driveway, they've got to pay £12.50.
Howard, of course, Sadiq Khan would argue fiercely, and he's been doing it all over the media for the last few weeks, that the point of this is a long-term project to save British lives from pollution.
Yeah, we hear this all the time. Sadiq Khan actually thrives on emotion, not fact. And I repeat what I said just now. Imperial College is saying that ULEZ will have no demonstrable impact on the air quality we breathe. TfL already told them last time that. And I did a CBR, Centre of Economic and Business Research, analytical report, which actually reported that the cost of a ULEZ is approaching £1 billion, £800 million. Is what it's going to cost to the economy. In other words, it reduced London's GDP by nearly £1 billion every year. Where's he coming from? All he needs to do is work with drivers, work with people to try and get clean fuel technology put in place. And there's loads of that around, and it's here for us to take and introduce now. He won't do that because he's hell-bent on net zero and the 2030 ban.
Where do you sit, though, in terms of public transport and the measures which should go along any ultra-low emission zone or any low emission zone? Surely there needs to be decent public transport options for people alongside.
Absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. We must do that. But we've got a public transport system that he's actually increased, I think, fares by 6%. So not is he finding and hitting people in the pocket who drive a car, he's also hitting people who need public transport. And let's not forget, one of the things he ignores is how much pollution is in the underground. We're looking at 1,800% more particulate matter in the underground. So he's forcing people to actually endure poor health, poor air quality, whilst taking money from streets above which are good air quality. It makes no sense, Bev.
Yeah. OK, Howard Cox from Reform, thank you for talking to us this morning. If you are just tuning in, Andrew Pearce is in the studio, as always, today. And I'm down here in Bromley in Kent on one of the main high streets. I don't know if it is actually the high street. I've got a meteorologist here, face you'll be very familiar with. Jim Dale is with us. Jim, you're listening to the conversation. Obviously, you couldn't hear what Howard was saying there.
I'm aware what he's about,
but
yeah,
you know
how
Howard feels about this and how people who are pro-car feel about this. Would you like to give us the other side as to why we need to take these measures?
Well, first of all, this is a good day for Londoners, for Greater London. Small steps, But I think it's a bigger step for the Greater London area, and not just the Greater London area. We've got to talk the country as well, because there's many similar schemes going on in other cities.
There are 15 across the country.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the direction of travel. I'm not going to take this away. So it's about the environment, it's about people's health, and there's a little bit in terms of making small steps in terms of climate change and mitigating that. So I absolutely say this is a good day. Those that oppose ULEZ have lost. They need to get over it and need to move on. And that's where we are at this moment.
Is it too much stick, though, Jim, and not enough carrot at the moment for something that nobody actually voted for?
Well, when you say nobody voted for, we elected a mayor. I say London has elected a mayor a few years ago. So he's got a mandate, much as the government have got a mandate to do what they do. And, you know, much of what this government does, I don't agree with. But because we elected them, you have to go with it. You have to be law-abiding, you have to do the right things, and you have to accept what comes. It's exactly the same with the mayor. I appreciate, and I think the mayor appreciated after Keir Starmer had words with him after the Uxbridge by-election, that there needs to be some movement in the what you might call the what we're trying to say, the payback to car drivers, to these people who would lose their cars. I understand that, and I think he's gone some way. £2,000 is not a small amount of money for, say, a 2006 car, if you see where I'm going. Yeah. So there's always when you make movements like this, there's always going to be some that get left behind, and I realise that, and there is sympathy in that direction. But I think 90% of cars and vehicles are compliant in the London area and beyond. So you know, this is the movement. This is going forward. This is the direction of travel, as I say.
There'll be some people, Jim, who will say, at the moment, when bills are going up, we're in this cost of living, cost of lockdown crisis, whatever you want to call it, the hangover of the last few years. The time is not right now to increase this at this moment for all of the people who are coming here this morning in Bromley, opening their shops, paying huge electricity bills, which show no sign of going down this winter, electricity and gas. He needs to wait. Sadiq Khan should have given it, 6 to 12 months. It wouldn't have made any difference to the planet if he was to do that, would it?
This was a long time coming anyway. Let's make that clear. This has been on the agenda for a long time, and what drivers have got to do and have to do to get to be compliant or to scrap their cars has been on for a long time. I think we could continue saying this forever. If we said this next year, for example, I don't think the economics would be that much better. So we're looking at the economic argument. I think we've got to go back to the central government and say, you put us there for the most part, you take us out. There's one little piece that's missing, if I'd like to add, and that is, if it's a financial thing, maybe knock on the doors of those that have caused these problems more than anybody, and that is the big oil industry that provides the likes of the petrol stations. Maybe they should be putting something in terms of the financial side to offset that, rather than necessarily Londoners, people in the street like these people surrounding us today. That should have happened, and nobody's knocking on their door, and I find it strange.
All right, Jim, thank you. You're going to be with me this morning. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. If you are just tuning in, I am in Bromley in Kent this morning. Andrew Pearce is in London. We're talking to locals here because, of course, the ULEZ expansion day has arrived, all 32 London boroughs now included. Good morning, Gemma. Now, we can have a look at your sign. I think we know your position on this. How long have you been campaigning, and why are you so against it?
My partner Oliver and I first got involved after Christmas. So about January we went to the Trafalgar Square protest, and we've been to most of them ever since.
Now, those were the protests which Sadiq Khan said was full of conspiracy theorists and lunatics. How did you feel about that?
We're certainly not lunatics. We know exactly what we're talking about. I'm afraid paying £12.50 a day is not going to clean up our air. How is that going to clean up our air? £12.50 a day is ludicrous. You know, there are other ways, if our air needs cleaning up, which I personally don't think it does. It's, you know, paying to do that is not going to help.
And it's your partner who is a tree surgeon. Your business, your family business, is a tree surgeon. Now, your vehicle, I believe, is not compliant. Do you get a little bit of time, though, in order to make it compliant?
No, as of today, that's it. We're paying £12.50 a day for Oliver to go to work. We're a family of 6. We're already in a cost of living crisis. We're finding it very hard to make ends meet. this has put us under huge pressure. And as Oliver says, tree surgery is not a price list. It's not like going to the shops and buying a product. It's not a price list. So he's then got to charge his customers. They're going to haggle with him. In effect, this £12.50 a day is just going to go to Sadiq Khan. And it's not going to change anything without air, because he will still be driving that vehicle.
So he can't use the scrappage scheme, or it doesn't work out financially for you as a business to take that money?
No, financially, that does not help us at all. We're not in a position to get finance. We cannot get a van for the £2,000 scrappage that is a tipper truck that enables him to do his job. No, it's no help to us whatsoever. So therefore, it is pay Sadiq Khan £12.50 a day to go to work, to do his quotes. Sometimes he's not even earning money. He's out doing quotes. He's out collecting logs. He's not earning money for that, but he will still be paying. It's not fair.
Now, Sadiq Khan would say you've had time, you've had plenty of warning to invest in a new vehicle. What would you say to that?
Where's the money for that? Where is the money for that? Because we're not in a position, we can't get finance. We've already had to finance the tools, the chipper for Oliver to go to work. We've had a multitude of things happen. We've just got over COVID, where we were locked down and work was very thin on the ground. People don't have money to get their trees cut at the moment. They're struggling to make ends meet. Having a tree cut can be a luxury. So our business is already suffering, and this is just causing it to suffer further.
I would also imagine that Oliver, and possibly yourself, you care about the environment. The very nature of his job is that he works with trees. It's not as though you're saying that you don't care about the environment, but you feel it's been, what, too soon, too restrictive, there should be more exemptions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Oliver, as you know, many of his customers will say, he talks people out of having their trees cut down because he says it's a beautiful tree, leave it where it is. We can just make it look pretty, you know, whatever. He doesn't go around just chopping trees down for money. He cares about the environment. We all do. But as I say, no, we haven't had time to get used to this idea. We haven't had time to get our finances in place to get a new vehicle. And it is just about money.
And it could literally mean the end of your business.
Absolutely, and that is going to put us into huge hardship. And it's, you know, it's the mental health side of things as well. I mean, you know, I hope Oliver doesn't mind me saying, but he has been depressed over this. I've seen him physically upset about how is he going to feed his family, how is he going to keep a roof over his family's heads. It's heartbreaking. What Sadiq Khan is doing to us is heartbreaking.
OK, well, thank you, Gemma. Stay with me for a little while, won't you? Of course, Sadiq Khan would say that what he's trying to do is to help people and to save lives. He says that a lot. One strange thing about ULEZ, I think, is the exemption of classic cars. Phil is here to tell me a little bit about that. So this is any car, Phil, that's created before 1973.
Well, it's not that. It's actually over 40 years old.
Right.
But it has to be registered historic to get the historic tax status in effect and get the exemption. So.
But does it seem a little bit? I don't know. Can you explain the logic behind it? I guess these are old cars, but they're often the biggest engines and they're kicking out a lot of fuel, and yet you can now drive them down the high street and not pay £12.50.
Well, depends how local law's been done, really, hasn't it? I think the better way to do it is keep old vehicles going and not waste vast resources producing these horrible electric vehicles which do not help the environment at all. Like, take for example, when a little kiddie goes out mining in some third world country and pollute the local water supply, the locals didn't get consultation of that, on mining cobalt, lithium, whatever, and having severe health effects from that. Also, fairly recently, there was a cargo ship fire. OK, they said, oh, it's 50 electric cars. They went up to 500. That's 5,000 electric vehicles. The whole thing just caught fire, and it was almost impossible to put it out. And that's the danger of electric vehicles. And also, if an electric vehicle gets involved in a minor shunt, it's written off. There's the danger of the batteries.
It's a good point, actually. Thank you, Phil, because, of course, these will be the classic cars of the future. Some of these older cars now, which aren't exempt from ULEZ, Andrew. Some of the diesel cars, the petrol cars, anything after 2016 for a diesel car, anything after 2006
well, I can sort of
for a petrol car.
That little bit. It's actually Euro 6 diesel and Euro 4 petrol. So
right.
That's basically what it is. Look at the COC, Certificate of Conformity, of the actual V5 or the logbook. And that will tell you what Euro standard that car actually is.
Right, I see. OK. But it isn't always entirely clear. Thank you, Phil. I'm going to be here, Andrew, as you know, until midday this morning and possibly a little bit after as well to talk to Mark and Pip, because it's a very divisive issue. Obviously, Sadiq Khan is very proud today. He will be bragging on the global stage that he has the largest car tariff zone in the entire world. But is that necessarily what is right for British people? And for British businesses, and for people who frankly don't want to have to scrap a car, which is perfectly good but might be kicking out a little more emissions than a newer car or an electric car. Back to you.
Bev, lots of emails coming in, of course, texts. Anne says, ULEZ, my guess is Mayor Khan doesn't care who it affects. He's doing it all with his eyes set on the over-there horizon of his next job after he leaves this one. Remember, he did a mini-world tour a few months ago to promote his CV on the world stage. Next job, the World Health Organization, United Nations, or similar. It would explain why he's listening to Starmer, as well as it being car tax to fill his budget black hole. Well, let's be quite clear about Keir Starmer, by the way. So Keir Starmer has only latterly become a reluctant critic of ULEZ since the Labour Party miserably failed to win the Uxbridge by-election, which they should have won at a canter, but the Tories turned it into a referendum on ULEZ. Dave says if Sadiq Khan really believes ULEZ is about cleaning the air quality and not feeling the huge gap in his finances, he'll have no objection to putting the £12.50 charges and the fines he collects into the scrappage scheme to make it fit for purpose. The fine, of course, is £180, £90 if you pay it within the first 14 days. Jules says there are a lot of causes of asthma other than the exhaust pollutants, dry, stale air indoors, dust mites and the like, but every vehicle in London produces tyre and brake dust. The latter can be very dangerous as it contains asbestos. This ULEZ expansion is just a money-grabbing scheme. You're dead right, Jules. Lots more coming in. Do send us your views, your texts, your emails, your tweets. Derek says, why is no one talking about the Glasgow system? There is no daily charge for non-compliant vehicles. Yep. They're simply banned. And if you get a £60 fine, which doubles each time you enter the zone, please highlight this alongside the London ULEZ. Bev.
Yeah, you know what, there's another interesting issue, and he's absolutely right, because there are 15 zones now across the UK. One problem with this system is the car cloning. So more than 5,000 drivers were fined £160 since October because they cloned cars. So the admin issues with this system are very costly as well. We're going to be looking at that and the implications about the data and the surveillance. A huge, we got loads of topics. We're going to be here in Bromley all morning.
All right.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to today, it's a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers for most of us, but it'll be pretty breezy up across the north. So we start the day with this band of showery rain across northern England, parts of Wales. That will sink its way southeastwards as the day goes on. Behind it for Scotland and Northern Ireland, really some blustery showers from the word go. The heaviest of these showers probably up across northern Scotland. I think come the afternoon, best of any drier and brighter weather will be across northern England. And in any sunshine, not feeling too bad for the time of year. In the south, we could see highs reaching around 21 or 22 degrees. Into the evening, this band of rain across the Midlands will sink its way southeastwards, clearing the southeast as we go through the course of the night. That will leave a lot of southern parts of the UK dry and clear, where further north, continuation of some showers. And again, some of these could be potentially heavy up across the far north of Scotland. Under the clear skies, turning a little bit cool for the time of year, could see lows falling down to about 5 to 6 degrees in some prone spots. But that will set us up for a fairly bright start across many parts of the country, and I'm hopeful a little bit more in the way of sunshine around compared to today. But still the risk of some showers. Some of these showers could be quite heavy. Initially across northern England, they may well sink their way into parts of the Midlands and East Anglia as the day goes on, with perhaps the driest and brightest conditions tomorrow down towards the southwest. Highs very similar to what we'll be seeing today.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It is Tuesday, the 29th of August. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. Andrew is in London today. I am here in Bromley because, of course, ULEZ takes hold. Today is the day that get the largest car charging zone in the whole world.
Travel chaos. Thousands of Brits are stranded abroad after a UK traffic fault yesterday. The fallout could last for days. It's the worst disruption since 2013. And he's refusing to go. He's still hanging on, you know. That Spanish Football Federation have called for the immediate resignation of their president after he kissed that female player following the World Cup win. But he's not going to go. Is his position untenable? And as ever, we want to know your thoughts on all our talking points today, so do email us at gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, here's your news with Ray.
Good morning, it's 10:01. Our top story. The Transport Secretary has told GB News an independent review will take place following massive disruption to air travel. Mark Harper says he hopes airlines will be stepping up to their responsibilities, making sure that passengers get back home. Thousands of passengers are still waiting for their flights after air traffic controllers had to manually input flight plans yesterday. Although National Air Traffic Services has now resolved the problem, they're warning of continuing delays while backlogs are cleared. Travel expert Simon Calder told us it's had a major impact.
I had counted over 1,200 flights cancelled, and that is 200,000 people waking up this morning where they didn't want to be. And I dare say a few places of work will be looking a bit empty today as people can't get home. And I'm afraid things are getting worse before they get better. British Airways and EasyJet have got around 60 cancellations each today. That represents another 20,000 or so travellers.
London has become the world's largest pollution charging area after the ultra-low emission zone was expanded to cover the whole capital. Drivers whose vehicles don't meet minimum emissions standards when entering the zone will now have to pay £12.50 a day. However, Transport for London is offering grants to residents and businesses for scrapping non-compliant vehicles. Transport Secretary Mark Harper saying that the Mayor went about the plan the wrong way.
I don't have the power to stop it coming into force. That's a decision for the Mayor of London, backed by the Labour leader. I think he should think again. He says this is to do with air quality. His own impact assessment says this will only have a minor to negligible effect on air pollution. It's not about air pollution, it's about a money-raising exercise, and this is absolutely not the time to be putting all those costs on hard-pressed and hard-working Londoners and those in the area outside London.
Well, that's the government's view, but Mums for Lungs campaigner Karina Fernandez says Mayor Khan has made the right decision.
I myself have spent a lot of time in hospital with my son who has asthma. I'm asthmatic also myself. Both of us really feel it on high pollution days. And to sit by my son's hospital bed, not knowing whether or not they're able to bring his asthma under control, which is clearly exacerbated by pollution. When you think about little children's faces, they're about the height of your average exhaust pipe.
Labour and the Lib Dems are preparing for a showdown over Nadine Dorries' parliamentary seat. The former Culture Secretary is expected to officially stand down today after finally handing in her resignation over the weekend. It means a by-election could be scheduled as soon as October. Although normally a safe Conservative seat, it's expected to be hotly contested and another difficult electoral test for the Prime Minister. The Met Police Commissioner says the force will stop attending mental health calls from the end of this month. Scotland Yard's new Right Care, Right Person programme will see officers redirected from non-life-threatening mental health calls to core police work. It's to prevent officers from being stretched thin and over-policing mental health cases. The force says a clear threshold will be set for a police response, with officers only attending when there's a risk to life or serious harm. The NHS is expanding blood pressure checks in local communities to prevent heart attacks and strokes. High street pharmacies delivered just under 150,000 checks to over 40s in the year to May. That's more than double the number last year. Now, this new funding will see a further 2.5 million checks carried out. It's thought that this could help to prevent more than 1,300 cardiovascular events each year. Two men are in hospital after a number of stabbing incidents at London's Notting Hill Carnival. The 29-year-old is in a critical condition, while a 19-year-old is in a serious but stable condition. Both were stabbed yesterday evening as the festival came to a close. Police say 6 other men, aged between 18 and 40, sustained non-life-threatening injuries in separate stabbing incidents. Shop price inflation has shown signs of slowing, reaching its lowest rate since October last year. According to the British Retail Consortium, prices rose by 6.9% in the year leading up to August. That's down from 8.4% in July. The fall has been attributed to a slower rise in fresh food prices. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now let's get straight back to Bev in Bromley.
Good morning, welcome to Britain's Newsroom. This morning from Bromley in Kent, the Garden of England it is, of course. And I'm joined now, I'm talking this morning to lots of locals, joined now by one of the very important men here, MP Sir Bob Neal. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Conservative MP. Let's walk and talk so we can take in some of the beautiful sights of Bromley.
Yep, great to see you.
We're very happy to be here. Just explain to us what impact ULEZ being incorporated into Bromley today. What impact is it having on the locals?
Well, it's going to hit a lot of local people and a lot of local businesses very hard. We're very much outer London. As it happens, we have the best air quality in Greater London. We've got the lowest levels of pollution. A third of our borough is green belt. We go right down to the borders of Kent. After I leave you, Bev, I'm going down to Biggin Hill. That's a village in the green belt. But they're going to be clobbered with this ridiculous £12.50 a day cut charge.
So, of course, Sadiq Khan would say, Bob, if you want your constituents to enjoy clean air and to make the most of these wonderful green spaces you have, I'm so sorry, but it's time to give up on polluting cars. We've had them too long. It's a luxury we can no longer afford from an environmental point of view.
I think there's 2 points to make. Firstly, in relation to that's his alleged reason for doing this. I don't believe it really is. As far as we're concerned, as I say, our air quality is the best. Also, though, we have the largest percentage of pensioners in Greater London. A lot of those people are on fixed incomes. They've got an old car that they may have had for 10, 15 years. It's well maintained. They use it to run to the shops. A couple of miles into Bromley, go and see some friends.
Right.
Its mileage is probably a few hundred miles a year, if that.
So what does this mean for those pensioners then? Does it mean that some of them will just give up on driving now?
Well, it's exactly right. I had a letter from a gentleman who's 83, only came in on Sunday on my email. He is going to be trapped in his home, effectively. Can't get out to meet family, friends. He's going to be dependent now on others to come to get him because he cannot afford to invest in a new car. And this ridiculous idea that you're going to get a ULEZ compliant car for £2,000 is really for the birds.
Yeah.
So people like that have lost their independence because of the mayor. It's his direct fault and his responsibility.
Now, he isn't here today. He would say it is about air pollution. He would say that he was voted in to be in control of this wonderful city, and this is what he believes is the right thing to do for the longer term, for the grandchildren of your constituents, and that really, frankly, it's just time for a change.
Well, everybody knows that we want to improve air pollution. Everybody knows that we're getting cleaner and better vehicles coming along now. The government's been encouraging that, and we're phasing out older vehicles by 2030. But he's doing this in a rush, purely for the sake of political grandstanding, and also actually to fill a hole in his own coffers. Because Sadiq Khan bust the TfL budget long before this ever came along, when he imposed a ridiculous fare freeze he couldn't afford. And then, of course, their finances fell apart in the pandemic. So he's actually taxing outer Londoners to fill up the deficit that he created, the black hole he created in TfL's finances. That's the real reason for this.
So what can the Conservatives do? What can Rishi Sunak do? He certainly changed the rhetoric about the motorist after the Uxbridge by-election.
Right.
It was quite noticeable, I think, to a lot of our viewers and listeners were in touch, and they were quite heartened by the mood music they were hearing from Rishi Sunak. But what else can he do?
Well, what I hope he'll do is he'll support an amendment that's been put down in the House of Lords by my colleague Lord Moynihan, which would require the consent of the London boroughs affected by any extension of this scheme. It wouldn't be retrospective, but it would cut it off from the day that Act came into Parliament. We could do that reasonably quickly, not immediately, but it will give people light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
That's one thing the government can do. The second thing, of course, is it's a political one, frankly, and that's to rally round and get a change of mayor. Because our candidate for mayor, Susan Hall, is committed to scrapping ULEZ on day one.
Yeah.
So there's a political action, there is a legislative action, not as quick as I'd like, but at least it will be something. We mustn't give up on this at all.
What is the city of Bromley? Is it a city or a town? I'm so sorry, I should know the answer to that.
Officially, it's a London borough. I think we call it a town, but of course it's a collection of communities. Bromley, Orpington, Beckenham, Chislehurst,
Right.
Biggin Hill, all part of the big London Borough of Bromley, the largest borough in London. As I say, one of the greenest in London too.
And what is it like? I mean, just to tell our viewers and listeners who aren't familiar with this area, is it affluent? Is it prosperous? Is it a particularly diverse area?
It's actually a much more mixed area than people think. People assume, suburbs must mean leafy and prosperous. Well, parts are, but as I say, we've also got the highest pensioner population in London. We have also areas of real deprivation and low income. We have a number of between the wars estates. We've also got areas like Penge, which are much closer to inner London. And we've got quite a lot of people living on fixed incomes. We've got a mixed range of income levels here. So I've got two communities in my constituency where we've got a lot of people on minimum wage, on no wage jobs, a lot of people running small businesses, the classic white van man that you find in this part of Londden. In my own family, we've got people who need carers to come in to help my elderly mother. They have little cars to run around in. They can't afford expensive cars. They're not on big wages. And they're the people who are going to be hit by this.
OK. Bob, it's lovely to see you this morning. Sir Bob Neal there, MP for this area, Conservative MP. Don't go anywhere, will you? You can go and get me a coffee if you want. I think I just told Sir Bob Neal to go and get me a cappuccino. We're not short of coffee shops in this area. Now, Jim Dale is here this morning. Jim, it's very difficult to argue when you hear Bob talking about the impacts on some of the most marginalised people, those on low income, pensioners who have a little run around they've had for a few years, who thought they could carry on visiting the grandchildren in it and not have to pay this £12.50 a day or risk the £90 fine. So just give us some sort of proportionality here as to why we need to have this.
The reason we have to have it is the direction of travel in terms of health, in terms of environment, in terms of small steps. And I say that as a meteorologist, in terms of the climate change side of things. That's all we can do. We can't do this on our own, and this has been replicated in certain ways across the country. So we're standing here in a pedestrian zone, which is quite nice. No cars, no fumes, apart from a few cigarettes here and there. But it's actually quite pleasant. So I approach this perhaps not as a scientist, if you like, or working within the scientific community. I approach it in terms of saying common sense. This is common sense. This is the direction of travel. And while I have sympathy for the implementation or in the difficulties that certain members of the community of the population will have, always when you make major changes, this will happen. I think you've just got to look at the big picture and the direction of travel. And for me, the environment and health come first.
Do we have much clear science on how bad cars are for the environment, petrol and diesel cars?
Yeah, I think we do. We could have this interview sat behind a diesel car if you wish, and I don't think we come out of it very well after about an hour.
The irony, Jim, is that there was a very noisy, very smelly-looking diesel generator just here with one of the donut stands, and I thought, well, he's not going to be ULEZ compliant with his generator, is he? And that's the trouble. We see this sort of contradictions when you move around a city like this.
There will always be little things here and there. You mentioned the classic cars earlier. Perhaps the reason for that is because they are classic cars and they can get away with it, but they're probably arguably a small proportion of the total amount of cars, and what we're trying to do, or what the Sadiq Khan's trying to do, is trying to implement that across the board, if you like, more of the population involved. And I think when you look at Londoners and ask them, and the polls that I've seen, the vast majority of them accept that this is the direction of travel.
OK, Jim, thank you. I like the fact that you're saying direction of travel. It's got a lovely sort of appropriateness to that. And I was just watching a skateboarder go flying past, and I thought, well, the next generation, they're quite happy on skateboards. I wouldn't be happy on a skateboard. Justin Coquette joins me now. I imagine you wouldn't be happy on a skateboard either, would you? But you have been driving an electric car for many years.
Oh, yes. We bought our first electric car in 2014, and I bought my current one in 2016.
You must have had one of the first off the production line.
Yeah, I think we were pretty early. We had a BMW i3, and then in 2016 I bought a Tesla Model S, and my wife changed the
i3 for a Tesla Model 3 2 years ago. So, and the reason we drive electric cars is because they're better. They accelerate faster, they're cheaper to maintain, they are cheaper to run, they need very little maintenance, and frankly, the whole experience is fantastic. You know, love them.
So you, even though you're pro-electric car, you have your concerns about ULEZ from a data security point of view. Now, this is something I don't think gets enough coverage.
No.
All those cameras which are going up around this borough now, around the whole of Greater London, are filming us, surveilling us, and keeping that data?
Yeah, so the ANPR cameras, now I don't know the individual camera.
So that's automatic number plate recognition.
That's right, that's what's being used. The point is that that is information about where people are travelling, how they're travelling. And I question the security because, for example, in the United States, they have something called the NDAA, which is the National Defence Authorization Act, which basically means certain companies cannot be providers to critical infrastructure in the US without a defence authorization. And we saw a few years ago with mobile and telecoms networks, some manufacturers being banned from those networks. And the question is what's going on with the type of equipment and etc. that's being used for these networks. Now, the other problem is a large number of these cameras have actually been stolen. So once you steal a camera, it's a bit like stealing a laptop. You know, there is information on that relating to its security credentials, its network access, etc., etc. And how is that being managed? What I would really like to see is some evidence that GCHQ or somebody like this has done a full and thorough investigation, not only into this network, but all the council networks as well. And I think a lot of them will be found wanting.
That could be another legal loophole, of course, that does get the London Assembly into some sort of trouble and to get them tied up in all sorts of judicial knots, actually. Because if it is found, I think what you're saying, if it is found that these cameras are containing all of this data and we haven't given our permission, effectively, then there could be a huge class action.
You've got DPA, you've got
data protection,
GDPR, etc., etc. There's all sorts of it, and this has all been put in a bit of a rush. And I rather suspect there'd be some corners cut. I don't know, but I think somebody somewhere needs to ask the question. Needs to be a proper freedom of information request, and maybe that's something GBNews could ask for. I don't know.
But you do think that in terms of moving towards electric vehicles, not necessarily for the planet, but for the individual, is a good thing to move towards?
Yes, so without a doubt. I mean, I drive an electric vehicle because they are better. I had my first test drive in 2013 and I was blown away, and I thought, I've got to have this, you know. That's why I bought an electric vehicle. I mean, the environmental credentials are a nice bonus on top. And I have a super eco house and all this sort of thing, air source heat pump. I have that.
You must be very rich, Justin.
No, I did most of it myself. Funnily enough, I did it.
Because that's part of the problem, isn't it? Some of the environmental cars, the Teslas, they don't give them away.
No, they don't. But when you add up the total cost of ownership, even when I bought mine, the total cost of ownership, given the mileage I was doing at the time, made a lot of sense. You know, and that's how it came. But no, I mean, this 2030 ban petrol cars. I just wonder why the government do it, because no matter, it doesn't matter, because by 2030 people will be buying electrics anyway because they'll be cheaper and better, you know, so why bother, you know, upsetting people?
All right, well, Sadiq Khan is upsetting people today. Justin, thank you so much for joining me there. There are a lot of people upset about it today, of course, Andrew, but of those people who think we should be relying less on our cars, that we should be looking after the planet for the next generation. Lots of kids walking around here today. Of course, it's the summer holidays, flying around on skateboards. Maybe there's a middle ground somewhere that has to be met. Back to you.
All right, that's Bev Turner in Bromley talking about the introduction of the absolutely loathed ultra-low emission zone expansion. Now, still to come, the chaos at our airports, the worst since 2010. We're GB News, Britain's news channel.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to today, it's a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers for most of us, but it'll be pretty breezy up across the north. So we start the day with this band of showery rain across northern England, parts of Wales. That will sink its way southeastwards as the day goes on. Behind it for Scotland and Northern Ireland, really some blustery showers from the word go. The heaviest of these showers probably up across northern Scotland. I think come the afternoon, best of any drier and brighter weather will be across northern England. And in any sunshine, not feeling too bad for the time of year. In the south, we could see highs reaching around 21 or 22 degrees. Into the evening, this band of rain across the Midlands will sink its way southeastwards, clearing the southeast as we go through the course of the night. That will leave a lot of southern parts of the UK dry and clear, where further north, continuation of some showers. And again, some of these could be potentially heavy up across the far north of Scotland. Under the clear skies, turning a little bit cool for the time of year, could see lows falling down to about 5 to 6 degrees in some prone spots. But that will set us up for a fairly bright start across many parts of the country, and I'm hopeful a little bit more in the way of sunshine around compared to today. But still the risk of some showers. Some of these showers could be quite heavy. Initially across northern England, they may well sink their way into parts of the Midlands and East Anglia as the day goes on, with perhaps the driest and brightest conditions tomorrow down towards the southwest. Highs very similar to what we'll be seeing today.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel that already at it. That fighting is going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
you should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
You love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, it's 10:25 on Britain's Newsroom with GB News with me, Andrew Pearce, and Bev Turner, who is in Bromley talking about the introduction of the expansion of the ultra-low emission zone. I'm talking to you about the absolute chaos at our airports. Again, bank holiday, what do you expect? Days more disruption predicted after a major system failure in Britain's air traffic control system left tens of thousands stranded. Of course, bank holiday, one of the busiest days of the year. The technical fault caused 80% of flights to be delayed, an estimated 1,200 cancelled in the single worst day of air traffic disruption since the Icelandic volcano eruption in 2010. Joining us now is Paul Charles, who's the Chief Executive at the PC agency. Paul, morning to you. It puts it in perspective, doesn't it? The last time we had disruption like this, there was a major volcanic eruption in Iceland. This time, it was nothing to do with Iceland. Presumably, the system just got overloaded, no backup system, and I read with horror that they were reduced to having to log a lot of the flights by hand.
Yes, we've seen over 1,600 flight cancellations now since yesterday morning when this outage first occurred. And no, it wasn't a hack. It seems to have been a failure of the software somewhere. And it does seem remarkable that they then have to resort to manual processes, which, to be fair, is a safe way of making sure aircraft land okay and take off okay. But it shouldn't be like that in this day and age. There should be a backup system. There should be better software. And that's why I think the government needs to launch a national inquiry into the state of our British infrastructure around aviation at the moment.
Yeah, because have I got this right, Paul? It just seems to me virtually every bank holiday or major holiday period, there is a problem with the airlines and problems with delays and disruptions, this being the worst, of course, for 13 years.
We've certainly seen some high-profile incidents over recent bank holidays. Just a few weeks ago, we were talking about the e-gates falling over, of course, which affected all of our airports around the UK. Now, this time, it's over 6,000 flights that have been affected and literally 500,000 people around the world who were caught up in this. Many of them will lose money. They won't get compensation because the airlines say it's not our fault. It was NAT's computer system to blame. And I hate to say it, but I dare say we'll have more issues, which is why we need to see the government be proactive on this, do a resilience test against all the aviation infrastructure in this country, and tell us where things are going wrong so they can learn from it.
What often happens as well, just to make it worse for families and people caught up in this, Paul, we hear again and again, nobody tells people what's happening. There's some photographs in the papers today of some very anguished-looking passengers and some very anguished staff trying to placate them. Why is that information not forthcoming?
Well, airlines, to be fair, have got better at communicating, sending texts and emails when there's a problem with your flight. I got one last week about a 20-minute delay, which I was surprised about, but at least they were communicating. So they have got better, but it's still not good enough. And I think now is the time for a conversation and debate to be properly taking place about when there is an outage like this, how airlines, airports and NATs all working together can communicate better to consumers, especially in other destinations, not in the UK. Often when you're in an airport somewhere in Europe, for example, the communication is much poorer. They don't know what's going on at the airline representative desk locally. And that needs to improve. And I think it's time with better technology now to find a much better system for consumers to rely on.
Mark, just finally, we know, don't we, that Heathrow Airport is probably the busiest airport in the world. So don't we need in this country an air traffic control system that reflects that? And also, more importantly, a backup system in case there is a problem?
We should have a system we're proud of, whether that's the e-gates, whether it's the air traffic control system that controls thousands of flights a day. We should be in a situation where our technology is fail-safe. That's why we need a UK government inquiry to determine what the technology should be, when the next investment's going to be, and let's see some millions spent on creating this resilient infrastructure so that consumers don't lose tens of millions of pounds as they have done in the last 24 hours.
All right, that's Paul Charles, who's the Chief Executive at the PC agency. And we will, of course, keep you up to date with all that disruption. Many more flights have been cancelled today, with some predictions the disruption will continue right up until Friday. Who'd go to an airport anywhere near a bank holiday? Not me. Still to come, Bev is in Bromley this morning talking about the expansion, finally it's happened, of the ultra-low emission zone, Sadiq Khan's stealth tax on millions and millions of people. £12.50 a day if you've got an older polluting car. That's after your morning news, of course, with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Andrew. It's 10:30, our top story. The Transport Secretary has told GB News an independent review will take place following massive disruption to air travel yesterday. Thousands of passengers are still waiting for their flights after air traffic controllers had to manually input flight plans. Although National Air Traffic Services has now resolved the problem, they're warning that disruption could still continue. London has become the world's largest pollution charging area after the ultra-low emission zone was expanded to cover the whole capital. Drivers whose vehicles don't meet minimum emissions standards when entering the zone will now have to pay £12.50 a day. 2 men are in hospital after a number of stabbing incidents at London's Notting Hill Carnival. The 29-year-old is in a critical condition, while a 19-year-old is serious but stable. 6 other men sustained non-life-threatening injuries in separate stabbing incidents. Meanwhile, the Metropolitan Police Federation says that 75 officers were assaulted at that event, including 1 sexually. And Nadine Dorries has tweeted saying that she has a new job after formally quitting as an MP. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has appointed the former Culture Secretary as steward and bailiff of the 300s of Chiltern. That's the traditional mechanism for quitting the Commons. Labour and the Lib Dems are now preparing for a showdown over her mid-Bedfordshire seat, with a by-election due as soon as October. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a look at today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2612 and 1.1670 euros. Price of gold, £1,525 and 14 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 at 7,432 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. I don't know whether you were watching earlier, but MP for the area, Sir Bob Neal, was here. He did go and buy me a coffee. Very nice man. Right, I'm here this morning talking to locals about the fact that the ULEZ scheme has been extended across a huge area today. All 32 London boroughs are now included in Sadiq Khan's master plan to make the car less polluting. Of course, if you have one of these vehicles, you can go onto the TfL website, you can put in your registration number, and it will tell you whether your car is compliant or not. It will depend on whether it's diesel or petrol and what year the car was made. Of course, Sadiq Khan will tell you this is all about saving the planet, saving the environment, stopping global warming. And meteorologist and friend of the channel, Jim Dale, is here with me this morning. So we're stood here, Jim, on a lovely sunny day.
The sun's come out, yes.
Honestly, I'm very conflicted about global warming.
We've had a long conversation this morning about climate change.
We have.
And this is only a small part of it. I think the main part of ULEZ is more towards the health issue than it is necessarily to climate change. But every little helps, as they say.
What difference does it make to climate change? Because, of course, you know, Sadiq Khan has been saying we've all got a responsibility. We've got Agenda 2030. We'll be getting rid of all petrol and diesel cars by 2030. Yeah. As a meteorologist and an environmentalist, does that warm your heart?
Yes, it does. It's never going to come in one lump. It's never going to happen tomorrow. It's small steps, and ULEZ is a little bit of a part of that, a little bit of a step forward, if you like, a nice step forward. As I said to you earlier, we're studying in a nice pedestrian zone here in Bromley, and it is refreshing not to have traffic going past you, whatever they're putting out. So yeah. I view this as a common sense move. That's how I see it from a health point of view particularly, but it has a wraparound in terms of the environment as well.
OK. I'm just seeing off camera here, Alan Miller of the Together Group. Hello, how are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Now, why are you here this morning, Alan? Why Bromley? What's going on here today?
Well, I think Bromley is so important. I lived in Shortlands for a couple of years, and I'm often around here actually visiting, travelling through. And Bromley's done a really sterling challenge, has made some very important points about the impacts to residents, people that are here, the fact they don't want it. Obviously, they were involved in the judicial review, but we should remember that particular judicial review was about very specific technical legal questions and not about the bigger questions around the democratic question, about the consultation being ignored, which the Mayor has drilled down on today, saying, well, it was never a referendum. He bought the cameras beforehand, but also the harmful impacts that are going to happen to the majority of people in terms of charges and a cost of living crisis. We've seen today as well that shadow cabinet ministers in the Labour Party have come out saying this is not the right thing to do. Sadiq Khan isn't listening even to people in his own party. And at the same time, he's drilling down on these claims, the scientific health claims. But TfL's report itself said there'd be, if anything, very negligible impacts by doing this. But we know that the cost would be enormous. It's what it is. It's a cash grab. We've also seen, unfortunately, the Mayor's office tampering and trying to change scientific reports with Queen Mary's University and Imperial. So I'm here today at Bromley to show some support for the traders, very important, retail and hospitality. And, you know, we've just come out of a really tough period, as we all know, the whole lockdowns. We've got this cost of living crisis now, and also to say that this isn't over now, because many people are very upset, they're very angry. We've seen in the Midlands with the Clean Air Zone that tens of thousands of people just did not pay. The Birmingham City Council have now kind of had them all appealed. They've not paid. People are furious about this. It's unacceptable. And the fact that we keep getting gaslit now by our mayor, who keeps drilling down on these claims about the emergencies and the scientific benefits, he would do much better to get into TfL and go underground there. And actually, the way if we really want to extend lives, we want to make sure that people have better housing and they can earn money in places like this and get better incomes. That, in the last 100 years, is how people have done that. So I'm here today to show support and say no to ULEZ still.
Yeah. Well, you know, Sadiq Khan would say that with any change, any sort of industrial shift we've had in the past, there will always be casualties. And that the risk is that the Luddites say we don't want any change. We don't want this. We just want to carry on as we are. We should all be allowed to drive polluting diesel cars and petrol cars. Are you just being a Luddite, Alan?
It's a really good question, because if we look at the last 4 decades, there's been some fantastic improvements. We've had catalytic converters. If you look at the health, if you look at the air quality in the last 4 decades, massively improved. In terms of European and international statistics, we rank very highly in London and in Britain with that. And so the notion, and he's also used the argument that it's like the smoking ban and it has sort of improved health. Well, obviously, it's not like the smoking ban, because the smoking ban was actually a ban everywhere. People could have had their views about that or not. You couldn't pay to carry on smoking in the particular place, right? So this whole thing, these examples, it's not about being a Luddite. I think if you ask everyone in the abstract, do they want better? Of course, everyone, not even in the abstract. In reality, we want great air. The question is, how bad is our air right now, right, in terms of the metrics? And it's actually very good. There are places where it's problematic in TfL on the underground.
Yeah. And particularly here, this apparently Bromley, I was learning today from MP Sir Bob Neal, that actually Bromley has the cleanest air of all the London boroughs. And that's the question, isn't it, to you guys in the studio? Is our air sufficiently bad that we need to make these sorts of compromises on businesses and families and the pensioners that Bob Neal was talking about as well? Jim Dale will be here with me later. Alan Miller, good to see you. So back to you guys in the studio. Maybe that's the question to Tonya and Nigel Nelson, who are joining us now. Is our air sufficiently bad, do you think, in your experience, that we have to make these changes and make them so quickly?
Well, as introduced, Tonya's with me. Tonya Buxton, lovely to see you again, Tonya. You had a lovely time away with your family in Greece, and you're looking fabulous. And Nigel Nelson, who always looks fabulous, even though I always disagree with absolutely everything you say, Nigel. Tonya, to you first. On the ultra-low emission zone, do you see any case for it?
No,
expansion?
none at all. And also, its foundations are set on falsehood. And we need to dig down and get rid of those first and foremost. What Sadiq has said is the truth about why ULEZ is happening is an untruth. And so we need to just dig down onto the things that he's saying, you know, the 4,000 extra deaths and what the actual air quality is. It's all a bit bleary. And before you start rolling things out, you need to have hard facts, don't you?
You do, you do. So, Nigel, there is unease now in the Labour ranks.
Yes, I'm a bit disappointed by Labour at the moment about this.
Well, not for the first time, of course, but there's only unease in the Labour ranks since they failed to win the by-election.
Correct. Uxbridge has spooked politicians of all parties.
Yeah, because they should have walked it. Boris Johnson's obviously. The Tories made a referendum on the ultra-low emission zone, and they failed to win that.
That's right, and the result is that Labour have been scared off ULEZ completely.
Yeah.
As everyone has. I mean, all politicians seem to have been. I mean, I agree with the ULEZ in principle. I think that it's been a success in central London.
Of course he does.
It has cut pollution by half there.
I don't believe it.
Where I think Sadiq Khan got it wrong was that he could have graduated the charge. It was not about money, as he says, then just graduated the charge, say, start at £2.50 before going all the way up to £12.50. Yeah. And most importantly, for the outlying counties surrounding London, to make the scrappage scheme available to them. So if you have a nurse who lives in Kent working at a London hospital, suddenly hit by ULEZ, she or he should have the £2,000 to scrap the car and buy a new one.
Yeah, but a new car, I don't have a car. Tonya, but a new car, you get £2,000 to scrap your old car. What sort of new car are you going to get for £2,000? You're not.
It's hitting the poor, it's wrong, and really I'm very glad that everybody is taking this on. I'm glad that we're taking this on, because it shouldn't be happening.
I mean, the GBNews poll actually was really interesting on the fact that so many people were against it, when actually only 10% of people are actually affected by it.
Yeah. I think it's because it's another tax, Nigel, and people don't like new taxes.
No, indeed they don't, yeah.
We can broaden this beyond London and the South East, because
it will do.
You've got one in Bristol, a similar version, Birmingham, Glasgow, and it's coming. And we saw Sadiq Khan we saw it at the weekend, wants to introduce some form of road pricing scheme too. Labour,
he says not.
Yeah, well, he says not. Labour are going to declare war on the motorists, aren't they?
Well, I'm not sure about that. And also, road pricing was an idea that came up under the Tories. I mean, they were thinking about doing it. We have got to do something about congestion on the roads. It may be that the best way of doing it would be some kind of per mile charge, get rid of the road tax on the basis of that. There are all sorts of things that you might decide to do. That doesn't make it anti-motorist. It means just a new way of actually organising it.
All right, let's talk about another form of transport, because here we are, bank holiday, Tonya, and guess what? Chaos at our major airports, particularly Heathrow, the largest, busiest airport in the world, and the worst disruption since 2010.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? It's unbelievable that they've also said that they don't know why this has happened. And that's what I find a bit galling. I mean, is it a cyber attack? What has made this happen? It can't just be that the systems are down. How can the system be down and the backup system be down? I mean, how have they not tested all of this? How have they not checked all of this? We are Great Britain.
Yeah.
And we can't get planes in and out of our country.
And it's going to go until Friday, Nigel.
Yeah, well, if it gets sorted by then. I mean, you've got planes in the wrong place, that you've got crews who've overdone their hours now. The bit, I think Tonya's absolutely right. The bit that really made me angry about Mark Harper, the Transport Secretary, on his sort of media round this morning, was he was asked to explain exactly what has caused this, and the passengers have a right to know what happened. He couldn't. He said it was a technical glitch. Well, we all know that much.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some suggestion that it was caused by an incorrectly filed flight plan by a French airline. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah, I know. The French. Disrupting us again. That's what it is. It's a dastardly Gallic plot.
When in doubt,
blame the French. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That man Macron just can't bear this country to be a success, can he? That's what this is about.
Well, I presume it disrupted French airspace too, but anyway.
Yeah, but
the problem is because it's not the airline's fault, who is going to compensate the traveller?
Well, very good point, because some people just have to stay in hotels and they're not going to get to work, and they may not be paid unless they go to work, and the airline's saying, not us, Gov. They don't like paying at the best of times.
Yeah. And I think that's another problem. You need to look at the number of people being disrupted by that. I mean, they would have an option open to suing on the basis of, say, for lost earnings or something like that. But who's going to do that? You don't want all that. I have to say that I was disrupted by the fires in Rhodes, and we got compensation within several days.
Did you?
Yeah, the airline were really good about the delayed flight. So.
And you've just had a long trip to Greece, Tonya, to see your family. Were you disrupted there or back?
No, we were very lucky.
Right.
I mean, what I say, was I disrupted? Well, there's always delays.
Of course.
I mean, it's almost a miracle to get on a flight when you're supposed to get on and get off when you're supposed to get off. It doesn't ever happen. There's always delays. But we just missed this, thankfully, because this is really a nightmare for people. You know, people have. It was the bank holiday weekend. They've got that one day to get home, get to work the next day, and no one's explaining anything to them. I'm hearing of people with toddlers and things in airports. You can't stay in an airport with a toddler for 12 hours. You just can't do that.
It's terrible. Let's move on quickly, because we want to get through as much as we can. Doctor, now, I can't believe this. This is my flipping local hospital, the Royal Free, in North London.
Yeah, I know the Royal Free very well, yeah.
Well, is this complete madness? Nigel, Tonya, you introduced it. What are they doing, this wretched hospital?
What they basically said is that you're not allowed to cause any offence to anyone that's trans, and you can't ask inappropriate questions like, what is your name?
Why is that inappropriate?
What is your name? Listen, I had all 4 of my children at the Royal Free.
Right.
And I expect to be called a woman. I expect to be answered my name. One of the big no-no questions at the Royal Free now is to ask what genitalia you have.
Oh.
You're not allowed to ask that. because that's inappropriate.
But can't the doctor or nurse just have a look and see for themselves?
Well, it all depends.
You need to ask if there's a medical condition. I mean, you wouldn't walk into the hospital and then be asked about your genitalia.
No, you wouldn't. But if it's
unless you had a problem with it.
If there is something to do with that, then we've got to stop this rubbish now. You know, if you're going in as a woman, if you are a biological woman or a biological man, you should be able to be called biological. I am a woman. I'm not a cis woman. I'm a biological female. I'm a woman, that's it. And if I'm going in with some problem, you know, down under, I need to be able to have that straight conversation. Now, if I was a trans woman and I have some problem with my genitalia, I need to be able to answer the question.
Then it becomes relevant. No, I agree with that. It becomes relevant. I mean, just to put this into context, this is not hospital policy. What it is a group. It's the LGBTQ Friends Network at the hospital who put this idea up. So, as far as the hospital goes, they follow the GMC guidelines, which are you must, in fact, establish the identity of the patient and what's wrong with them.
But they have put this up on notice boards.
Yes, they have, yes. They've suggested this as an idea.
So this is a form of pressure?
Yes, I mean, they're a pressure group. In that sense, they're a pressure group. And it quite clearly is ridiculous not to be able to ask someone's name. I can't see, even whether you're trans or whatever you are, why your name should be a problem.
But it's been stated now, our Secretary of State, Suella Braverman, has said a woman should be called a woman. We should not have our freedom of speech taken away from us just in case we cause offence. Facts are facts. And this needs to just stop. Who is funding this pressure group is what I want to know. Why are they allowed into our hospitals to do this? Really, hospitals should be dealing with saving lives and preventing people from being ill. This middleman management of these woke causes, they have to stop. Because let me tell you, our NHS is failing us. It's failing us. It's failing the British people. And here we are having this argument about this ridiculous
But when it comes to language, it should be a matter of common sense, really. I mean, I think that you can substitute parent for mother or father in a lot of cases, and I think that that's probably fine. Also, it depends on the preference of the patient. I mean, I think that assuming you're not an emergency, ask the patient what they want. I mean, you're saying that if you were going in, you want to be a woman, you want to be a mother.
That's because I am.
That's because she's a woman.
I am a woman.
And you're a bloke. So it's not about wanting to be a woman. She is a woman.
I wanted to be called. Sorry, I missed the word called out of that, didn't I?
Not fields.
Okay, let me just nip forward, because I want to squeeze in another story before we go to the break. This extraordinary story will not go away. The mother now of the football bloke who kissed the girl, she's gone on hunger strike in a church. What is he, a political prisoner? I mean, what are we getting this out of context?
If she was Greek, you'd see it as a Greek tragedy. Her pulling her hair out, tearing her clothes.
It's
her poor
ridiculous.
son is on this witch hunt. You know, it is ridiculous. But, you know, a lot of it is... you've got to go into the nuances of it. So if I was the mother of Jennifer Hermoso, I would not want some bloke grabbing her and giving her a full-on kiss on the mouth. But it was a time of victory and glory. And what he should have said, as we said earlier, is that he should have just said, look, I'm really sorry.
Yeah, quite.
And as he hasn't, it makes me think that I think that it's not just about this, because actually, you know, people do get overexcited and do things that maybe they shouldn't have done. So I'm not so down on that, but I think is it representing something else that's going on in Spanish football?
Makes you wonder. Nigel, very briefly.
Yeah, but I agree with Tonya.
Strike, this is ridiculous,
What he should have said was, look, I was overcome by the emotion of the occasion. I shouldn't have done that. He apologises to...
he also put one woman over his shoulder in like a fireman's hoist.
Yeah, and I think that he needs to apologise publicly for what he did, and he should have done that immediately. Now what's going to happen is, however you cut it, this man is going. He is going to have to either resign or be fired.
It's tarnished the allure of the victory for the Spanish women.
No one's talking about the victory at all. They're just talking about what happened. But also, I think there is a machoism in football that needs to little bit be evened out.
I think so. That's right. Nigel and Tonya are coming back. They haven't disagreed very much, but I'm sure they will in the next.
We're working up to it.
Yes.
Now, still to come, we're going to be going back to Bromley for the latest on the expansion of the horrible ultra-low emission zone. This is Britain's News on GB News, the People's Channel.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here with the GB News forecast from the Met Office. A lot of cloud around today, and there'll be rain or showers for many of us, but the brightest skies will be in the north, albeit with some heavy downpours, especially for northern Scotland. That's where low pressure is. A little frontal system is also affecting parts of Wales and southwest England. That's bringing a lot of cloud and some longer spells of generally light but occasionally moderate rain and drizzle. Moving slowly through Wales and the southwest into the Midlands a little bit later on. Drier towards the southeast, albeit cloudy. Sunshine and showers for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England. The heaviest of the downpours for northern Scotland will feel cool. 21 Celsius, the afternoon high in the southeast. Now that system that I mentioned, bringing the cloud and rain or drizzle to central parts, that clears into the southeast through the evening. Some heavier showers developing alongside it, but either way, it's out of the way by dawn. Showers continuing to feed into the north and northwest, but some clear spells emerging and a cool night to come. A bit more comfortable for sleeping than, I suppose, at times last week. Then into the start of Wednesday, we've got some sunshine about first thing. Still some showers coming into the north and west, but increasingly by the afternoon, the heaviest and most frequent showers will be in the northern half of the UK, driest towards the south and southwest, and feeling warm in the sunny spells, 21 Celsius.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Andrew Pearce is in the studio as always, but I am out in Bromley in Kent this morning because of course ULEZ takes hold. Today is the day that London's ultra-low emission zone doubles in size, expanding from 8 to all 32 boroughs, making it the largest car charging zone in the whole world. Is it a war on motorists? Certain petrol and diesel vehicles will now have to pay £12.50 a day or risk a whopping £90 fine.
And of course it's bank holiday and the travel chaos. Thousands of Brits are still stranded abroad after a UK air traffic fault yesterday. The fallout could last for days. And as ever, we'd like to know what you think. Email us your views at gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, here's your morning news with Ray.
Thanks, Andrew. Rapidly approaching 1 minute past 11, our top story. The Transport Secretary has told GB News an independent review will take place following massive disruption to air travel. Mark Harper says he hopes airlines will be stepping up to their responsibilities, making sure that passengers get back home. Thousands of passengers are still waiting for their flights after air traffic controllers had to manually input flight plans yesterday. Although National Air Traffic Services has now resolved that problem, they're warning of continuing delays while backlogs are cleared. Travel expert Simon Calder told us it's had a major impact.
I had counted over 1,200 flights cancelled, and that is 200,000 people waking up this morning where they didn't want to be. And I dare say a few places of work will be looking a bit empty today as people can't get home. And I'm afraid things are getting worse before they get better. British Airways and EasyJet have got around 60 cancellations each today. That represents another 20,000 or so travellers.
Well, London has become the world's largest pollution charging area after the ultra-low emission zone was expanded to cover the whole of the capital. Drivers whose vehicles don't meet minimum emissions standards when entering the zone will now have to pay £12.50 a day. However, Transport for London is offering grants to residents and to businesses for scrapping non-compliant vehicles. Transport Secretary Mark Harper told us earlier on that the Mayor went about the plan in the wrong way.
I don't have the power to stop it coming into force. That's a decision for the Mayor of London, backed by the Labour leader. I think he should think again. He says this is to do with air quality. His own impact assessment says this will only have a minor to negligible effect on air pollution. It's not about air pollution, it's about a money-raising exercise, and this is absolutely not the time to be putting all those costs on hard-pressed and hard-working Londoners and those in the area outside London.
That's the government view, but Mums for Lungs campaigner Karina Fernandez says Mayor Khan did make the right decision.
I myself have spent a lot of time in hospital with my son who has asthma. I'm asthmatic also myself. Both of us really feel it on high pollution days. And to sit by my son's hospital bed, not knowing whether or not they're able to bring his asthma under control, which is clearly exacerbated by pollution. When you think about little children's faces, they're about the height of your average exhaust pipe.
2 men are in hospital after a number of stabbing incidents at London's Notting Hill Carnival. We should be able to cross now to our home and security editor Mark White in northwest London. Mark, good morning. Some pretty shocking reports of violence against the public and the police too.
Yes, for the second year running, Notting Hill Carnival was marred by significant violence on the final evening. We're at the scene of the most serious incident in which a 29-year-old man was stabbed and critically injured at 9 o'clock last night. An hour before that, a 19-year-old man was stabbed and seriously injured. He's in a stable condition in hospital. Add to that 6 other men between the age of 18 and 40 who were also stabbed during during the evening but received non-life-threatening injuries. Police say multiple officers were assaulted, weapons seized, including firearms. They're going to review the events of yesterday with a view to determining whether there need to be changes next year.
Mark White there in northwest London. We'll bring you on more on that story as we get it. Now, shop price inflation has shown signs of slowing, reaching its lowest rate since October last year. According to the British Retail Consortium, prices rose by 6.9% in the year leading up to August. That's down from 8.4% in July. The fall has been attributed to a slower rise in fresh food prices. The NHS is expanding blood pressure checks in local communities to help prevent heart attacks and strokes. High street pharmacies delivered just under 150,000 checks to over 40-year-olds in the year to May, more than double the number the previous year. Now, this new funding will see a further 2.5 million checks carried out, and it's thought that it could help to prevent more than 1,300 cardiovascular events each year. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying, play GB News. Now let's get back to Bev and Andrew.
Well, it's finally law after much wrangling and a High Court challenge by a number of Conservative boroughs. The ultra-low emission zone has been expanded to cover all 32 boroughs. Stanley Johnson, veteran environmental campaigner, delighted to say, joins me in the studio. The Tories think, for once, Stanley, they've got something with which they can really take the fight to Labour, because they saw what happened in the Uxbridge by-election, triggered by the resignation of a certain Boris Johnson. They held on to that seat against the odds when they lost 2 seats in different parts of the country on a crushing swing to the other side.
I think the Tories are seriously barking up the wrong tree if they think that attacking ULEZ is going to be the secret to success of the next election. And in fact, you could argue, since you mentioned the former MP for Uxbridge and Ruislip, you could argue that maybe the victory in Uxbridge was a little bit of a residual admiration and memory and recollection of the former MP. I say you'd have to get some sound. No, I'm old enough to remember a great Tory triumph. And what was that? It was the 1956 Clean Air Act, based on, 4 years later, the 1952 smog in London. As I say, I was old enough, I was at school, I remember it all. Now, it would be really, really crazy for the Conservatives to say, OK, for electoral gain, we are going to dump quite a lot of our environmental policies, including this today, for me, is a moment of great rejoicing. Instead of saying this expanded ULEZ zone is the largest charging zone, why not call it the largest anti-pollution exercise? And we are still way above WHO guidelines for air pollution, and we really are. So yes, we've had huge improvements, your correspondents have pointed that out, in air quality over the last decades in London. But there's a long, long way to go, and this charge, this policy, is absolutely vital, and the Tories will be betraying themselves, betraying their own environmental record if they dump it.
But I'm not a scientist, Stanley, but there is increasing evidence that a lot of the pollution that's caused by cars isn't coming out of the exhaust pipe. It's coming from the vehicle tyre. It's coming from the particle pollution thrown up by the tyre, much more so than what's coming out of the exhaust pipe. So aren't we looking in the wrong place?
Well, some of the particles are also coming out of the exhaust pipe. I mean, that's the 2.5 ppm, or whatever it is, the particle pollution. But we have to look at all aspects of that. And in fact, there's an argument that the sheer weight of the new vehicles is one of the problems as well, in terms of road damage and so on. No, the car has to be looked at, it has to be disciplined, and it has to be brought in to the way we live. And I think, honestly, this is part of doing the right thing. I have just, as you know, come back from 8 weeks in China. I've been going to China on and off since 1974. When I first went to China, the air pollution was horrendous. It got worse at the end of the 70s and the 80s. But now, I tell you, Beijing, for example, is a transformed city, and so is most of the other. And why are they transformed? Because they've had this massive shift towards electric vehicles in the cities.
Trouble is, electric vehicles are expensive, Stanley. People have to scrap their car if they can't afford to pay the £12.50. The scrappage scheme is £2,000. You put that towards a new car. Well, a new car, if you're going to buy a new one, £30,000. I talked to some van drivers, a business I talked to for a piece I did in the Mail on Saturday.
Yes.
He has a wholesale grocery business, 5 vans, 3 he has to replace at a cost of £100,000. He's 65, doesn't want that level of debt. He's closed the business down. That's heartbreaking.
Fine,
a 56-year-old business.
But you're barking up the right tree there in your comments. And yes, there is a case for helping people at the margin who do have the kind of situation you describe. But actually, if you look at the number of cars which are non-compliant, it is a very, very small number, relatively speaking. And we're going back, I think it's 2005 for petrol vehicles, is it 2016 for diesel vehicles? So yes, what the government, and in this case what the local government, as TfL, ought to be doing is really looking again at some of its compensation schemes, the scrapping scheme, the schemes for alternative systems. I think one of the schemes you can get is, yes, you get money, but you also get, transport passes and so on.
There must be a lot more cars who are not compliant, Stanley, because the projections in his own financial report to City Hall by the Mayor Sadiq Khan in 2005, the ULEZ will be bringing £1.1 billion in revenue. That includes the fines, of course, which are £180, not 90, 180 unless you pay up in 14 days.
Well, of course, now you do raise an intriguing point. I've been rather singing the praises of the mayor and warning against the Tory mayoral candidate making this her main plank. But you of course, are right to say, was there more in this than meets the eye? Was Sadiq Khan sort of running out of money? And did he think this was a useful measure? Well, who can say?
Yeah. Why couldn't you persuade Boris to run again as mayor? He walked it last time, he won it twice, he'd walk it again against Sadiq Khan, and he'd do it on a platform you wouldn't approve of course. It would be, he would scrap the expansion of ultra-low emission zone on day one.
I very much doubt if he'd do that.
He could relaunch his political career.
I doubt he would do that. I mean, my recollection is that it was as Mayor of London he brought in
the first stage, but he opposes the expansion.
The first stage of ULEZ. I haven't had a chance to talk to him enough on this one. I would hope to persuade him that in the long run, reducing air pollution is an absolute priority. Of course, you see the figures. It's very difficult to pin down how many deaths and years lost through air pollution. It seems to vary between 4,000 a year to 40,000 a year. You can't pin it down, but nonetheless, look at in the broad. What we're doing today is a matter of rejoicing.
Is your car ULEZ friendly?
Well, as a matter of fact, it is. And even my old one, which was a 2005 Subaru Forester, was actually amazingly ULEZ friendly, and the new one will be too.
Do you think, just finally, I talk to Labour about this a lot and they're very nervous about it, very anxious about it because of what happened in the by-election, and they say they think it will be like the congestion charge once it settles down. I'm not so sure they're right, because £12.50 a day, every day of the week, is a lot of money if you're on a fixed income. Yep. And also if you're running a small business and you need a van or a lorry.
As I say, as I understand it today, I have read in the newspaper, and I may be wrong about that.
Can't be if it was in my newspaper. It was in the Daily Mail, must be true.
But I have read that small van man, white van man, can actually also set off against his tax return the payment.
That's true. They can write it off to their tax, but that means people outside of the ULEZ zone are using their hard-earned taxes to subsidise white van man in London.
Well, so they should. We are talking about something which is not actually their fault, which is the general increase in pollution, and the polluter pays principle applies here, and it is absolutely right that society as a whole should help with this.
All right, that's a robust defence of the ultra-low emission zone. Don't forget it was Boris Johnson, certain Boris Johnson's Mayor of London, who introduced the low emission zone, which is being expanded. He implacably opposes the expansion, unlike his old man, Stanley, who thinks it's a good idea. We're going to go back now live to Bromley with Bev Turner, who's getting reaction to expansion on the ground. Bev.
Thank you, Andrew. That's right. I'm down here on Bromley High Street. Fantastic fruit and veg market here. I'm going to talk in just a moment to one of the people who runs that stall. Will tell us how it's affecting their business. But I was talking just a little bit earlier to a local mum who wanted to tell me her thoughts on the issue. She saw us there with the GB News microphone, and this is what Parisa had to say.
What we do at the moment, we walk a lot and we use the bus a lot.
In winter?
Yeah.
In the snow?
Loads of other European countries.
In the dark?
Yeah, we do it because actually it's really important to me, like air pollution. You know, 4 years ago I set up a little environmental charity called Greener and Cleaner, and one of the first things we were asked to do by local people was help bring in air purifiers to a primary school. Imagine, in one of the boroughs that supposedly has the best air quality, we have pockets of air quality that are so bad that there are thousands of parents in this borough who are worried about their children getting hospitalised monthly. I've heard of members of our little charity where they've got parents getting hospitalised every month because of air pollution. We've got one of the higher death rates because we've got so many elderly people here. And actually, it's costing the NHS and business 20 billion a year. So like as a thing for general small businesses and big businesses, people are going off sick as well. It's not just about mum's worry.
So we're trying to hear all sides of the story here in Bromley this morning down in Kent, and James joins me now. James, you run this very busy fruit and veg stall here. Business looks like it's booming. So what's the problem with ULEZ today?
The problem's obviously £12.50 a day to come to work. We've 2 vans to make sure we get enough stock, looking at £25 a day. So that cost has got to come from somewhere, and unfortunately it means our prices go up, so it hits the public.
And when I got down here just before, as we were setting up, you were saying that a colleague of yours can't now drive the van to your store.
Yeah, he kind of lives at the end of the high street, so it's a 250-yard drive. That's going to cost £12.50 a day just to come out short distance. So he's now lost his van and walking to work just to keep costs down, so we can keep our costs down to cost of living crisis, helping the public.
And you've had warning, of course. TfL would say, Sadiq Khan, the London Assembly would say, we warned you, James, this was coming. You haven't scrapped your van and got a new one.
And if you look at the prices of the used vehicles from a year ago to today, they've gone up by more than the £2,000 scrappage allowance that he's allowing us.
Is that because, do you think that people who are selling second-hand compliant cars have put the prices up for that very reason? They know they're in demand.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's supply and demand, so they've seen an opportunity and have taken full advantage of it. And it just impacts local businesses, footfall of customers. So
with you, if you're bringing your 2 vans here today to put all this fantastic produce, and we need more people like you running these small businesses. We don't just want to buy all our fruit and veg from the supermarket. Look how wonderful this is. How will you manage that 25 quid extra a day? You're just going to pass it on to the customer?
We have to pass it on, and it's the same with, obviously we speak to the other market traders who come down and they're in the same position. The price increase will just go on to the general public because we can't afford to not do it, basically.
And are your customers very wealthy people? Will they be able to pay you an extra few pounds? I can see somebody in the queue behind laughing at that suggestion.
I'm a regular customer.
And can you imagine a time when the prices have to go up? I'm sorry, my love, she's trying to do her shopping. I mean, how do you feel when you hear that lovely James here, that runs the store, that you come to regularly, saying that because of this policy, your prices will go up?
Well, we can't afford these things, to be honest. Really, everybody is suffering from this. And people, they can't afford it.
Do you drive?
I'm a bus driver.
You're a bus driver. So this would be good for you then, you see. Sadiq Khan would say he's doing this for you.
Just parked over there.
Would you like to see more people on public transport?
Oh yeah, definitely.
But this is part of the way of making that happen, isn't it? By putting ULEZ on cars, people will get on your bus.
I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, you'd have no complaints about that. It's a difficult issue to make. You can't keep everybody happy all of the time. Thank you, James. Just turning here to Simon Forthorpe, who is the local councillor, Conservative councillor. We're hearing all sides of this story this morning, Simon, but what's your position on it?
Well, obviously we're still opposed to it. We continue to oppose it, and I'll be going up to the protest at Downing Street later to continue protesting. And if Mr. Khan thinks it's stopped, it hasn't. The protests go on because we know that our Conservative candidate Susan Hall will scrap the ULEZ on day 1. So therefore, this will not go away right up until the next election.
But how important do you think that issue is going to be at the mayoral election?
It's very important because everybody around here recognises that effectively you've got a hole in the dam, and what you've got is the people responsible for the hole in the dam throwing stones at people who've got nothing to do with it. And in fact, the real hole is actually in TfL's finances, which Mr. Khan has had no control over. And that's what it's about. It's about filling that gap in the finances. Nothing to do with clean air. Myself and many other people would be right at the front of the queue if it was to do with clean air. We'd be there saying, come on, let's do something about it, but it's not.
The word that we often hear Sadiq Khan use when he's talking about ULEZ and the expansion of ULEZ is safety, Simon. He says this is for your safety, for the public, for the London people. This is going to keep you safe.
Well, if it's more worried about safety, he'd be doing something about knife crime. More young people die through knife crime than die through asthma each year. That's the sort of thing. So it shows how he's got his priorities wrong. It's got nothing to do with safety in that sense. It's all to do with money raising. Go back to square one. Follow the money. And I say this to every news channel out there, follow the money.
Sadiq Khan will be very popular today with other global leaders who are very tied into Agenda 2030, the global movement of travel towards net zero and towards the banning of petrol and diesel cars, in fact, by 2030. Is he showboating a bit, do you think, on the global stage? Because he now has the largest ULEZ zone in the world.
You'll have to ask him whether he's showboating, but I can tell you this. If it's doing it for his own ego, that is another reason not to do it. You should be doing it for what is good and what is right. And as I said, everybody knows that the air pollution on the tube is far, far worse than it is around here. And even in central London, it's far worse than it is out here. So why isn't he tackling that? If you knew there was a problem with air pollution somewhere, you'd tackle that first. You wouldn't then go and punish the people who's got nothing to do with.
OK, well, local councillor Simon Forthorpe, thank you so much for joining us here in Bromley this morning. I just want to read you a little bit of what Sadiq Khan has said, Andrew, this morning. He said it is a landmark day. It will lead to a greener, healthier London. And Sadiq Khan says all the evidence shows that it's clean air zones like ULEZ that are the game changer in a city like London.
All right, that's Bev Turner, and we'll be going back to Bev in Bromley. He's also said in an interview, he's done the morning round of interviews this morning, which is more than the Labour Party has. They've ducked out of those because they don't want to be asked about ULEZ. He says, I accept that ULEZ was a factor in relation to Uxbridge and rise of a lot of misinformation in relation to that campaign. So he's accepting, effectively, his wretched ultra-low emission zone expansion cost them victory in the rise at by-election. Now, still to come, the worst day of air traffic chaos in Britain since 2013. More than 1,000 flights have been cancelled, all because of a glitch, apparently. Stay with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
And it's 11:25. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. Well, bank holiday, my word. Air travellers are now facing days of disruption after a massive system failure yesterday in Britain's air traffic control system. Tens of thousands of people stranded on one of the busiest travel days of the year. Didn't they see it coming? We're going to go now to Will Hollis, who's our East Midlands reporter. Will, you're at the airport there. How bad is it? How bad is the disruption?
Yes, talk about the wrong thing at the wrong time. This was the year that was supposed to reimagine the travel industry, especially after that really difficult period, getting over COVID, all of the problems with holidays last year, so many being cancelled, people being forced off of planes on the runways. This was the year that was supposed to bring back to some sort of normal standard. Well, of course, we had the wildfires across Europe, and then for people that were thinking maybe towards the end of the summer for that bank holiday getaway, they'd be able to jet off on one of the planes that appears to be arriving just behind me now at East Midlands Airport and get a bit of a break or return from their late summer holiday. No, they weren't able to get that because this air traffic control problem that we've been hearing about since around midday yesterday afternoon has caused some of the biggest disruption that we've seen in air travel for a decade. Now, the NATS, that's the National Air Traffic Control Service, they say that this is something that hasn't happened for 10 years. They manage the air traffic services for pretty much every airport, as well as about 250 million passengers flying in and out of UK airspace in any given normal year, i.e. pre-COVID. So what we've got a problem now is the fallout from what happened yesterday. They say that they've identified and remedied the problem with their system. That meant that they had to input all of the flight data manually. Their automatic systems went down. That was fixed at around 4 o'clock yesterday. But now people are still stuck on the other end of their destination where they were hoping to return back to the UK yesterday or in the early hours of this morning. What we've heard from the Transport Secretary earlier today on GB News is that this could go on for quite some time, for a few days. He also told us this morning that it wasn't a cyber security attack, it was simply a technical fault, as I said, that has been remedied now. Now, the advice for people that are still stuck in this problem is to get in touch with the Civil Aviation Authority if you think that you're having a problem that's worth getting in touch with that national body. You should be provided with at least food and drink and accommodation if you need an overnight stay at wherever your airport is, your destination. Those are very much the basic minimum, but also your advice is to get in touch with your airline to find out what's going on, particularly because because the people that fly our planes, our pilots and the attendants that work on them are displaced. They're all over Europe right now in places where they might not have expected to be, and particularly one of the crucial things is that their hours have changed, so they won't actually legally be able to fly in the way that they would have been expected to, certainly over the last 24 hours. So ultimately, get in touch with your airline to find out what is going to happen if you are hoping to be getting on a flight in the near future.
All right, that's Will Hollis, our East Midlands reporter, who's at East Midlands Airport. We're going to be back in Bromley with Bev Turner on the, as it's just a few hours old now, ULEZ, the ultra-low emission zone, has been expanded. Bev's talking to lots of people down there, most of whom aren't very happy. But first, we're going to get the headlines now, because you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News Headlines with Ray.
It's 11:30. Our top story. The Transport Secretary has told GB News that an independent review will take place following massive disruption to air travel. Mark Harper says he hopes airlines will be stepping up to their responsibilities, making sure that passengers get back home. Thousands are still waiting for their flights after air traffic controllers had to manually input flight plans yesterday. London has become the world's largest pollution charging area after the ultra-low emission zone was expanded to cover the whole capital. Drivers whose vehicles don't meet minimum emissions standards when entering the zone will now have to pay £12.50 a day. However, Transport for London is offering grants to residents and businesses for scrapping non-compliant vehicles. 2 men are in hospital after a number of stabbing incidents at London's Notting Hill Carnival. A 29-year-old is in a critical condition, while a 19-year-old is in a serious but stable condition. Both were stabbed yesterday evening as the festival came to a close. Police say 6 other men aged between 18 and 40 sustained non-life-threatening injuries in separate stabbing incidents. Shop price inflation has shown signs of slowing, reaching its lowest rate since October last year. According to the British Retail Consortium, prices rose by 6.9% in the year leading up to August. That's down from 8.4% in July. The fall has been attributed to a slower rise in fresh food prices. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Time to take a look at the financial markets. The pound will buy you $1.2611 and 1.1661 euros. Price of gold, £1,525 and 18 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,454 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for physical investment.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to today, it's a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers for most of us, but it'll be pretty breezy up across the north. So we start the day with this band of showery rain across northern England, parts of Wales. That will sink its way southeastwards as the day goes on. Behind it for Scotland and Northern Ireland, really some blustery showers from the word go. The heaviest of these showers probably up across northern Scotland. I think come the afternoon, best of any drier and brighter weather will be across northern England. And in any sunshine, not feeling too bad for the time of year. In the south, we could see highs reaching around 21 or 22 degrees. Into the evening, this band of rain across the Midlands will sink its way southeastwards, clearing the southeast as we go through the course of the night. That will leave a lot of southern parts of the UK dry and clear, where further north, continuation of some showers. And again, some of these could be potentially heavy up across the far north of Scotland. Under the clear skies, turning a little bit cool for the time of year. Could see lows falling down to about 5 to 6 degrees in some prone spots. But that will set us up for a fairly bright start across many parts of the country, and I'm hopeful a little bit more in the way of sunshine around compared to today. But still the risk of some showers. Some of these showers could be quite heavy. Initially across northern England, they may well sink their way into parts of the Midlands and East Anglia as the day goes on, with perhaps the driest and brightest conditions tomorrow down towards the southwest. Highs very similar to what we'll be seeing today.
That warm feeling inside. From boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant, the read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom on GB News. That is the beautiful Sevenoaks Weald here in Kent. I'm here on Bromley High Street. I did have to get meteorologist Jim Dale to find out what beautiful patch of land that was. Of course he knew. I said I wanted to get in my car and have a drive up there and have a walk. Jim told me off, said I had to take a bike. I'm not going to take a bike to do that. But of course we're here today because it is the day in which ULEZ has expanded. Sadiq Khan is very happy about today. A lot of people aren't. Of course, the ULEZ started in 2019 in London. There are now 15 boroughs, including Glasgow and Birmingham, and also Sheffield. So let's hear from one employee in Sheffield, a business owner, in fact, an employer, who has a business which he thinks is going to cost him potentially a lot more than the £12.50 charge.
To enter the clean air zone in Sheffield, there's a £50 charge for lorries, buses and coaches, and £10 for taxis and vans that don't meet emission standards set by the council. Kai Moynihan runs minibus and coach firm Kai's Executive Travel, and so far has 62 fines racking up to £15,000. But he says the trips were for taking children to school, which are exempt.
So they put your exemption with Sheffield City Council. They don't seem to be even looking at the fines. They just double the fine and then send it you back. Send it to a tribunal. You get in touch with the tribunal. Sheffield City Council don't turn up at the tribunal. So you've wasted all your time and then eventually it just gets cancelled at the tribunal.
Kai fears the Clean Air Zone scheme is another tax that could force businesses like his to close.
Pay to pollute, really, in my eyes. Pay you £50, you can go in, but you're still polluting, you're still making the air. So if I'm paying the money, it's not making the air any cleaner. I think what Sheffield City Council want you to do, they want you to basically go and buy a vehicle, a Euro 6 vehicle, and end at the £40,000, £50,000 for a minibus, £200,000 for a coach. Who can afford that at the moment with living crisis? It's crippling businesses, it's absolutely crippling.
The council was unable to discuss individual circumstances like Kai's, but said hundreds of people in Sheffield die prematurely each year due to air pollution. It impacts health at every stage of life, including unborn babies. Introducing any new measure like the Clean Air Zone comes with challenges. We care about businesses and want to see them thrive and look at the concerns and find a suitable solution. Other businesses also worry for the future of trade in Sheffield due to the Clean Air Zone charges.
I've had to sell my van because it weren't a Euro 6 van. I'm a working lad and I can't afford 30 grand, 25, 30 grand to buy a new Euro 6 van. Sheffield City Centre, now, it's dying a death slowly. And this Clean Air Zone is not helping matters.
And now, 6 months from its launch, here's what people in Sheffield think to the Clean Air Zone.
It's an absolute shambles, the Clean Air Zone services. So, yeah, I think it's ridiculous, to be honest.
It was going to have to come, but I think it's a bit too early now. The air is for breathing, not poisoning.
I think it's a way for the council to make more money. Because let's face it, the lorries, cars, vans, everything is still going to drive through the Clean Air Zone. So we're still going to have the emissions. It's just that the council will be filling the coffers.
I do support it, by all means.
For now, Kai continues to wade through fines and is planning a protest against the council along with minibus firms like his. Anna Riley, GB News, Sheffield.
You see, it's not just a London thing, this ultra-low emission zone. It's expanding all over the country because Labour want to tax motorists. They want to declare war on motorists. We're going to have a fight with the panellists here in a second about this, Nigel Nelson, because they're back in the studio with me, Tonya Buxton, of course, and Nigel Nelson, who is our political commentator. But I want to talk to you first about this great story in The Telegraph about woke police. Nigel, you, of course, are the high priest of woke. So, come on, foam at the mouth.
Well,
about
thank you for that introduction. This is Mark Rowley, the Met Police Commissioner, and he wants to stop his officers getting involved in politics.
Round of applause.
So some of it makes sense. The idea is you don't wear badges apart from a poppy or a police memorial badge or a Help the Heroes wristband. Everything else is banned. So, yep, fairly sensible. I mean, you'd be quite right. You don't want police cars decked out in rainbow flags any more than you want them covered in the officer's favourite football team. That makes sense. But he's also banning things like they mustn't take the knee at a Black Lives Matter protest. They mustn't dance with Extinction Rebellion activists. Well, hang on a sec.
Good.
Do you not think, though, that...
No, I want them to arrest them, not to dance with them.
But isn't the answer to actually be flexible about things like this?
No.
And if some kind of engagement with the protesters works as far as policing goes, it's good that they do it to
diffuse them. Because you know what, the police are there to be a neutral policing body. Now, I was at the lockdown protests. I was at from the first one to the last one, I was at the lockdown protest. I saw how aggressive the police were with me. I had a policeman on the first protest come and scream in my face So, you know, they're not allowed to have opinions. They are not. They're just there to police. They're not to be bending the knee or doing TikToks or dancing or doing any of that. They're there and they're paid to be the police. They're supposed to be neutral and they're to uphold the law.
Right.
I don't care what their opinion is. Their job is to uphold the law.
What I'm arguing is that if you can diffuse tension...
But it doesn't.
But it doesn't. It causes more tension.
They stick themselves to the ground. They will not get out of the way of ambulances. They will not get out of the way of people going to work. And then you've got idiot police officers dancing with them, causing even more disruption.
Well, all those things don't happen at the same time.
It makes a mockery of the law.
It really makes a mockery of the law, and it also takes it into complete disregard what the majority of the British public want. You know, the law is there to uphold our rules and our laws as the majority of the British public. We vote them in.
But giving the police a human face...
We pay for the law. They are not allowed to have these woke opinions. They're driving the public off the police. I don't trust the police anymore. After having a policeman shout in my face, I'm now quite dubious about how I behave with police. And I am still very law-abiding and trusted the police and was always there for the police. Then that happened, and I'm seeing all these other different things that they're bending the knee here and dancing there and upholding things.
Well, maybe he should have engaged with you. Maybe you wouldn't distrust them.
I don't want them to engage with me. I just want them to do their job.
But you don't want them shouting in your face either, do you?
No, but that wasn't doing their job either.
Well, the point I'm making is that that's why the flexibility would exist, so as you can actually diffuse tensions if it's possible. I remember, for instance, we've just had the Notting Hill Carnival. Police dance with with everyone there. When I first went to the Notting Hill Carnival, I was hiding with the police under a dustbin lid as bricks came over. Surely it's better to join in with people if you can. It doesn't take their neutrality away.
It does.
It's not about expressing an opinion.
It's different. You're talking about a kind of carnival that's very different to protest. There's two different things going on there, so you can't...
But carnivals used to turn into riots, is the point I'm making.
How many stabbings were at this one? They're still not
There was
the
a serious one last night, which they're investigating.
Thank you very much. So it's still not great.
No, that's right. No, there were stabbings last night. Yeah. So, and you do tend to get that. But the idea that it doesn't turn into a riot anymore may have something to do with a rather gentler form of policing and the police actually joining in a bit with the revellers.
Gentler form of policing is not the same as joining in. They're two different things. Yes, I don't think the police should be this heavy-handed entity. If we're going to have a carnival, let's do it nicely. You don't have to join in. You have to be the police.
We're going to move on because Rwanda, remember Rwanda? We are going to deport illegal migrants to Rwanda.
No, we're not.
We hope at some point, Nigel. Let's go to you, Tonya, the Home Secretary.
Yes, I mean, the real problem here, and has been throughout many years, and especially since Brexit, is the Economic Court of Human Rights. I mean, European Court of Human Rights, the ECHR. We need to get out of that because they are anti-British. They want us not to have any British traditions. They are an unaccountable outsider, and they take our laws into their hands and do what they want with them. So the first step to get anything done in Britain is that we have to leave it. That's the most important thing that needs to happen with Rwanda, with so many cases that are being overturned.
And the Home Secretary has actually attacked the court for being politicised.
She has that. She's attacked the court for being politicised, and everybody's in agreement now that we should leave that. The whole point of leaving Brexit, for most British people, the point of Brexit was to be able to rule our country autonomously.
Now, Nigel, when the European Court of Human Rights took the decision to block the flight to Rwanda, which had been agreed through the British Parliament, we were never told the name of the judge, the identity, the country they're from, or even their gender. Outrageous, secretive and appalling when we've got our very own sophisticated judiciary in this country, which is the envy of the world, I would argue.
And at the moment, the judiciary in this country are putting a block on Rwanda as well.
At this point?
At this point, yeah. We'll have to see what the Supreme Court...
One round again.
We'll have to see what the Supreme Court comes back with.
The most senior judge in the land agrees with the idea.
Yes, I mean...
Or didn't object to it?
No, I mean, at the moment, that the courts have ruled sending people to Rwanda legal. Yeah. The concern now is whether or not it actually is a safe country. That is what the Supreme Court is deciding at the moment. When it comes to the ECHR, they're not anti-British. Half their decisions have gone in our favour.
That means half haven't.
Another half
right
haven't.
do they have? When our courts and our justice system has said something, then that should be it. It shouldn't be then able to go somewhere else.
Should we not, as a country, be part of a club where you decide the acceptable forms of international behaviour? We criticise Russia for the invasion of Ukraine. Very difficult to do that if we end up on the same side of Russia and get chucked out or leave the ECHR.
Well, we're in the United Nations. We're in all sorts.
Well, there's another example. I mean,
why do we need to be in the European Court? Do you not think the British judiciary is good at its job?
It's not a question about whether it's good.
Well, I think it is.
Whether it's good at its job. It's often a question of what Parliament does. Take, for instance, the one that came up recently because the government has been apologising to armed forces veterans who were gay, who were chucked out of the army or jailed for that. Now, that was an ECHR decision to remove the gay ban in the armed forces. Everyone now agrees with that decision, but they didn't agree with it at the time in 2000 when it was made.
Right. With pressure of time, I want to rattle through these stories because the other one, school uniform. Now, you've both been your parents. When I was a kid, I used to wear my brother's hand-me-down school jacket. It was too big for me because he was a bit bigger than me. But you put up with it. Lots of kids had hand-me-down jackets.
Mine did.
Yeah, but now it's becoming really... The average child will go through how many items of school uniform over the years?
It says 945 items of school uniform, costing almost 1,800.
Scary.
But still, my argument for that is, do you know what it would be like if they didn't have that uniform? So I am a real advocate for school uniforms.
Yeah, me too.
Because it would be a nightmare in the mornings, you know, trying to decide what they want, and especially when, you know, richer kids can afford name stuff, poor kids can't. So that kind of immoralises all of that. The problem I have with a lot of the uniforms is that the schools that decide that they want bespoke ones. And so instead of being able to go to a supermarket and getting a jumper for £12, you have to buy the bespoke one for 30. And that's where real problems come in at the...
Yeah, agree totally with that. Yeah, I mean, if you actually insist...
I don't want all this agreement.
Yes.
Well, we disagree on the previous two items. That if you have a designated school uniform shop you've got to go to, you'll pay more. So school uniforms should be much more generic. You can get a badge to put on your blazer. That's the sort of thing that you need, and that would keep the cost down for parents.
Yes, I completely agree. And also all my children's, because I've got, you know, 2 girls and 2 boys, the number 2 and number 4 always wore hand-me-downs.
Did they? And didn't mind?
I don't care.
No.
I mean, let's be honest. I'm sure they did, but I don't care.
I was number 4, so I got my brother's hand-me-downs.
Right.
But I didn't mind.
Yeah.
That's just what was done.
Well, my kids were different genders, so it was a bit more tricky.
Right. Now, we've got time for one last one. I can't believe this. This is in the Mail, Tonya. Tell me about sombreros. What the hell is happening now?
So at Reading Festival now, they're talking about cultural appropriation. That whole phrase makes me so cross. I mean, I just don't understand it. I'll give you an example of why it's complete rubbish. My cousin married a Sri Lankan woman, and the girl's mother said to me, would you like to wear a sari? And I thought, how lovely, I'll wear a sari to a wedding. And do you know who was upset about it? The Greek lot. Because the Greek lot wanted me not to wear the sari, because then I'd be kind of siding with the Sri Lankan lot. So it just shows you that real people have no problem with this. You know, my Sri Lankan family wanted me to wear a sari. If you want to go in full Greek dancing woman garb and you're British and you're whatever you are, do it. It's these stupid rules that just are ridiculous.
And so what's happening with the sombrero then, Nigel? Who's banned it?
Well, I mean, it's been banned at various pop festivals.
It's Reading Festival at the moment.
Yeah, the Reading Festival.
And they're banning all selling now.
And the point that Richard Littlejohn in the Mail makes is that he wore an army surplus jacket to the 1970 Isle of Wight Pop Festival. My parents wouldn't allow me to go to that. It didn't mean he'd appropriated the parachute regiment. But I think he makes a very good point there.
Yeah.
He often does. I'm afraid that's it from Tonya Buxton and Nigel Nelson. They'll, of course, be back with us another time. Up next, it's the live desk with Mark Longhurst and Pip Thompson. But first, we're going to get a final word from Beverly Turner, who is down there in... where is she? She's in Kent, talking about the expansion of the ultra-low emission zone. Bev.
Thank you, guys. I'm sorry I wasn't in the studio today, but it's been really interesting here down in Bromley this morning. Just one message here. This acts as a bit of a morality tale for you all. This is one viewer, Diana, local to here. She said she checked her car reg on the website, ULEZ website, 3 times in the last month, was told that her car was compliant. Today, she logged on for a final check and suddenly the site said that her car was not compliant. Diana says, I'm 74 years old. I'm now left with the prospect of having to fork out for a new car suddenly or not be able to do the shopping or go out with the car. So check if your car is compliant today if you live in any of these London boroughs. As we've said, it isn't just a London issue. There are 15 ULEZ zones around the country now, very possibly coming to a town near you soon. Hopefully after today you understand it a little bit better and you might have an opinion on it. I've had a great morning here. We've got Pip and Mark up next. Pip, what's coming up?
Happening in the skies today as well, because hundreds of thousands of people are still stranded. Scores of flights cancelled again today at Heathrow and Gatwick. We will bring you the latest, and we'll be talking about the scammers who are fleecing Britain's ULEZ drivers. GB News has identified at least 4 fake websites hitting the internet on this, the first day of the charging scheme. All the details on that to come. Now, here's your weather forecast.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to today, it's a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers for most of us, but it'll be pretty breezy up across the north. So we start the day with this band of showery rain across northern England, parts of Wales. That will sink its way southeastwards as the day goes on. Behind it for Scotland and Northern Ireland, really some blustery showers from the word go. The heaviest of these showers probably up across northern Scotland. I think come the afternoon, best of any drier and brighter weather will be across northern England. And in any sunshine, not feeling too bad for the time of year. In the south, we could see highs reaching around 21 or 22 degrees. Into the evening, this band of rain across the Midlands will sink its way southeastwards, clearing the southeast as we go through the course of the night. That will leave a lot of southern parts of the UK dry and clear, where further north, continuation of some showers. And again, some of these could be potentially heavy up across the far north of Scotland.